start to go on the virtual or the live feed, so just one moment. Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming out for this public informational forum on the hotel acquisition project, a project that's being coordinated in partnership with the State of Washington, Department of Commerce, the Thurston County, the City of Lacey, and the Regional Housing Council. And again, the purpose of today is to get some information out, respond to people's questions that have questions about this proposal or this project, and then get that question and answer, and talk about what it looks like long term. So we'll be holding two of these sessions. Of course, we're starting now at 3 o'clock this afternoon. There'll be a second session at 6 p.m. tonight. This is an overview of what we'll be talking about today with the agenda. And what we'd like to set up is a quick overview of the project and partnerships and the funding initiative and some of the expectations from the partnership. And then also we'll turn it over to LIHI, which is the Low Income Housing Institute, who are the ones that are acquiring the hotel property, and they'll go through and talk about who they are and their operational model and what to expect with their ownership and operation of the facility. Before we get started, I do want to, and then we'll open it up after that to a question and answer. We have a question and answer period, and we have a panel of folks from each of the partnership jurisdictions, as well as folks in the audience from staff that will be able to respond to questions from those that have concerns or like more information. And so I'll go through a quick round of introductions, and then we'll get into the presentation. My name is Rick Walk. I am currently the Director of Community and Economic Development for the City of Lacey. And over here at the table in the front of the room and the panel, so we have Scott Spence, City Manager for the City of Lacey. Tom Webster, who is the in the Office of Homeless Response and Housing Management. He's the manager of the office program. Keely Marino, who is the Thurston County Homeless Response Manager. Josh.Castle from the LIHI, who is their Director of Engagement. And Nathan Pepin, who is the Director of Homeless Services and State Right-of-Ways for the Department of Commerce. And then going over in the other side of the room from right to left, we have Sharon Lee, who is the Executive Director for LIHI. Councilwoman Carolyn Cox with the Lacey City Council. Deputy Chief Robert Hollis with Lacey Police Department. Assistant City Manager Shannon Kelly Fong with the City of Lacey. Grant Beck, who is the City of Lacey Planning and Development Services Manager. And let's see, I catch everybody that, John Brown, who is the Program Manager for LIHI as well. So we got all the various pieces and components here that are be working on the project, so we should have plenty of information for everybody to digest today. So real quick, what got us to this point is back in May of this year, the governor's office directed an initiative to start addressing homeless encampments in the state right-of-ways, especially particular I-5. And that is a statewide effort focusing on certain counties, King County, Snohomish County, Pierce County, Spokane County, and Thurston County. So with this initiative, the goal was to quickly move people out of the prioritized state right-of-ways and into better living situations. And a lot of this impetus was because of safety and encampments along the I-5 corridor. In Thurston County, some of those targeted locations were the interchanges near Lily Road, Pacific Avenue, Slater-Kinney Road, and then on state land portions approximately Wheeler Avenue, Plum Street, 14th Avenue, and Henderson Boulevard in Olympia. And as we all know in the community, there's been a growth in the homeless or unhoused individuals in our communities, and trying to address and provide services and shelter for those individuals has been a difficult task because of the lack of resources. And so one of the things is that state initiative initially came out that they wanted to accomplish this within 30 to 45 days. And as we started meeting with them, the partner jurisdictions, Thurston County, City of Olympia, City of Tumwater, and City of Lacey, talking about the resources we have and what we could do to accommodate individuals that were in their right-of-way. We quickly identified that there was a lack of shelter beds or shelter resources available. Just as a point in time count of 2020, which is a annual count that the region does to try to take a census of those that are unhoused. Out of the just over 1,000 people that were unhoused in 2020, 526 of those individuals were unsheltered or out in the streets. I believe in the 2022 count, those numbers are around 420 or so individuals that were unhoused out in the streets. And it's tough to reconcile those two numbers because there are different methodologies in how those censuses were taken. But needless to say, there's quite a few individuals out there that are in the community unhoused. As of right now, we have about 164 shelter beds for single adults without children that are available, that are also at capacity currently in the region. And I have that total 233, and those are additional shelter beds that are for youth or families, individuals with children. So just for single adults, there's about 164 beds out there, and those are at capacity constantly. Also, we have about 302 permanent supportive housing units that are in the community that have been built and constructed in the last several years. And we do have another second phase of the 2028 Martin project that will bring in another 63 permanent supportive housing units. But knowing that the amount of individuals out there that need services and the amount of resources currently available, we found that there was a disconnect in ability to safely and supportively move those individuals out of their current situation into shelter that's surrounded with supportive services. So because of that, working with the state developed a financial package to help develop and bring more resources online. And while they developed financial packages for each one of those counties in the state that I mentioned, for Thurston County, the award package or the financial package totaled about $37 million of investment into this community. And I want to emphasize too that this is not just a hotel acquisition project in Lacey. This is actually a regional effort to try to bring more capacity, more shelter throughout the region. So a quick rundown of the numbers and the breakout is, of that $37 million, just under $1 million is allocated for providing outreach and support for those individuals currently in the right-of-way and starting developing the relationships with those individuals. Just $200,000 towards hotel vouchers for placement of individuals of domestic violence, or victims of domestic violence. And the reason for that is because they are running from some situation that is unsafe, trying to figure out and put them into hotels and support them and keep them protected is a paramount effort of this process. Also, because we just had the Unity Commons project come online at Martin Way, the 2828 Martin Way project. They add some shelter bed capacity. The state funded 3 years of operation and of that facility to reserve 24 beds. So we have a spot for overnight shelter to serve those individuals. Also, about $6.2 million will go towards a project that's in the City of Olympia. It's the Olympia Franz Anderson Tiny Road Project. This will bring online about 50 tiny home units. Again, adding capacity to our resources. And then also, we had a funding gap for phase 2 of the Martin Way project at Unity Commons, and that would, those 63 units, and the state was provided $2 million to bridge that funding gap. But for the hotel acquisition that we're talking about today, at the 8200 Quinault Drive, the state provided $24 million. And what that $24 million goes towards is $15 million towards property acquisition, $5 million towards the rehabilitation of the property, remodel into shelter capacity, enhanced shelter capacity, site security, all those different pieces, and then also funding 2 years of operation at $2 million a year for a total of $4 million. So that's the breakdown of the $24 million that would go towards the acquisition project at 8200 Quinault Drive. So some of the existing conditions at the location, hotel location, again, as I mentioned, the acquisition of the property is under contract with LIHI, with scheduled to close sometime in January of 2023. Currently, the hotel has 124 rooms on about 2.2 acres and about 133 parking spaces. And the way it's configured with those parking spaces, those are all type of amenities that will help support the anticipated operation of the site as an enhanced shelter. Also, I just wanted to highlight too, there's a lot of question about calls for service or police activity. In 2021, as is, the total number of calls for service to that location is about 448 calls for police response. And this year to date, we're at 416. So again, we're anticipating with this site converting into an enhanced shelter and ultimately into permanent supportive housing, we anticipate it being with this over 24/7 site management, that a lot of that activity will decrease in time and with a well-managed site. So some of the expectations that we've had as a partnership and been working out with the MOUs with the Department of Commerce and Thurston County and the City of Lacey, as well as eventually with the contract for operations with LIHI. And again, when LIHI does their part of the presentation, they'll go in more detail about these items, but these are kind of the list of things that we were looking at. So with the remodel of this facility, we can have up to 118 fully furnished rooms. 6 of those rooms for staff and case management offices. There will be 24/7 on-site staff and security. With that, there will be perimeter fencing, and so people coming and going will be monitored. There will be also required case management. That's as people are placed there, they're going to need to have interaction with case management individuals. Now, I want to draw a clarification of that. That is, you can't require them to go into treatment services or other things, but having that daily interaction and checking in and developing that relationship will be something that will be conducted at the facility. There will also be a code of conduct for individuals that are living at the facility. Another thing is on-site services will include providing 3 meals a day. That will also provide that they have a place to eat and have not necessarily going out into the community looking for food. And then also with LIHI's operation, and they'll talk a little bit more about this, but they will form a community advisory group. And this will be an opportunity for people in the community, surrounding business owners or property owners to meet regularly with LIHI staff, talk about the operations, talk about any issues that are going on, and resolve those issues, and then also potentially get a better understanding of what the operations and the services being provided at the facility. Also, we'll be forming an operations council that will be made up of representatives of the City of Lacey, Thurston County, Department of Commerce, and LIHI to talk about the operations, ongoing operations of the facility. This group will meet regularly, and if there are issues that are coming up through those operations, that there'll be a place that we can resolve them and develop a strategy to address what those impacts could be. And then ultimately, the goal of this project is to acquire for the initial enhanced shelter, but then also eventually convert it to permanent supportive housing, more of an apartment style type of living arrangement. And that is set up in the MOU to be within 2 to 5 years, depending on funding availability. And then also, we're going to be working out the agreement on priority of placement of the individuals that will be placed in the facility. Just to go in a little bit more detail on that priority of placement, how that will occur. Right now, like many hotels in the region, there are individuals that are currently being placed there through HIN funds or service providers that are finding locations for individuals that they're on voucher systems. Those individuals that are currently in the hotel, don't want to displace them as this converts, that we want to keep them in place and then also bring in on-site support and services to them. So that'd be first priority. Second priority is for individuals that are currently located within the state's right-of-ways within Thurston County. Third will be single adults identified through the Thurston County Coordinated Entry System. This is a program that's all the local service providers work within to be able to place individuals into locations based on the highest and greatest needs. Then also, fourth priority would be single adults live in the City of Lacey or Thurston County that are displaced from unsheltered encampments that are not on that coordinated entry, master entry list. Then the fifth and sixth options are other individuals based on the permission of Thurston County and other agreed upon populations. And most importantly is there is a concern that we want this to be ultimately an asset for the Thurston County region because we do have a strong effort in trying to address and provide services to unhoused individuals. We wanted to make sure that that it remains that as a local asset. So we have the sixth priority is to prevent people being located here from other parts of the state. Put a provision in there that unless the property is operating at less than 75% capacity, we may identify other populations that are sufficient to occupy the available rooms in consultation with Department of Commerce, Lacey, and LIHI. We wanted to make sure that, one, if this is not operating capacity and there's room available, that we provide that opportunity to help people, but we also want to make sure that it's first a resource for this region and the needs for our unhoused communities. So with that, I will turn it over to Josh, and he'll kind of give a nice overview of who LIHI is, their model and operations, and what you could expect with their management.
Awesome, thank you. Can you guys all hear me? All right. First of all, I just want to express our gratitude to our partners, the City of Lacey, Thurston County, along with Washington State, the Department of Commerce, and WSDOT, and just all the community organizations that have reached out to us, all the agencies. We've had a lot of feedback, a lot of people interested in joining the community advisory group, and people interested in the shelter and providers that have reached out. So that's been great to hear the positive feedback and the interest in the program. How do I click? Oh, thank you. I need a clicker. I'm like, ah.
It's magic.
Thank you.
Just snap it.
I know that's, all right. It's like, is there some techie thing I don't understand that my partner knows? Okay. Here we go. All right. I want to introduce a couple of people from LIHI that are here. Sharon Lee, who's our founding executive director over in the corner. Sharon's going to be able to provide some answers to questions when we get to that period. And then John Brown, I actually wish John was sitting over there, but John is a program manager who manages all the staff at each of our sites in Tacoma and Olympia. I also am going to embarrass John. He's a neighbor of Lacey, so he lives here. He's been here a while, so he's a local, pretty close to the site. And I do the community engagement for LIHI. So LIHI, we have over 3,000 units of permanent supportive housing, permanent housing across the region, including permanent supportive housing. We have some transitional housing. We've been doing that for about 31 years now in 6 different counties. We also have 2 urban rest stop hygiene centers providing free hygiene resources for people experiencing homelessness, laundry, showers, and bathrooms. And then we have tiny house villages and enhanced shelters across the region. We have 2 enhanced shelters, one in Tacoma and one in Seattle. I'll be sharing more about those. And then each of these provide a shelter, community safety, case management to help folks transition into permanent housing. A couple examples. We are quite local. We have a lot of local programs and projects in the region. So we have Billy Frank Junior Place providing 43 units of permanent housing for veterans, individuals who are disabled, and young adults. We also have Unity Commons that we opened recently, providing 65 units of permanent housing for veterans, seniors, people living with disabilities. Along with part of this is a partnership with Interfaith Works to do a enhanced shelter with 58 beds, a 24/7 enhanced shelter. One great example of how this program is going to work is we have a similar program at Tacoma called Aspen Court, which was the former Comfort Inn. That's right now serving about 101 people, a lot of people in that building, 94 units. And this is basically a similar program where it's enhanced shelter, bridge housing, with the plan to convert over time into permanent supportive housing. and then in a couple of years. That's another partnership with the city, in this case, the City of Tacoma, City of Lakewood, and Pierce County. And that opened just about a year ago, so we're at about a year anniversary. So jumping to our enhanced shelter that we're doing here, so there's, Rick mentioned much of this, so I'm going to reiterate a few things, but it's going to be 118 fully furnished rooms for the residents. There's going to be 6 rooms devoted to our staff and our case management. The facility is going to be fully enclosed with fencing. It's going to include a community gathering space, a kitchen, laundry facilities, and there'll be building-wide Wi-Fi. The persons that are, this is the whole list. Actually, this is a complete repeat of what Rick had on his other slide, so I won't bore you with it, but this is the prioritization list of how we're, getting folks in. So first of all, we have 20 or so folks that are currently living there, currently residing there. They're going to be okay. We're not displacing any of them. They're going to be able to stay put. So we're working with the service providers, the building management, to make sure that that happens. And then we are going to be moving folks in from the right-of-way, which is where the funding source that comes from the state, getting folks out of these state-owned rights-of-way, and then everything else that's on there, the coordinated entry system, the City of Lacey, and then providers that we work with, local providers in the community that have relationships with those who are experiencing homelessness and would be a good fit for the program. Management and operations, we're going to have a shelter operations manager who manages the site and provides all the support to all the shelter organizers. They're going to manage the organizers. The organizers do a bunch of things. They provide security and operations support and make sure the facility is kept up. And then we have the case managers who are really a crucial part of the program. This is the key to getting folks into permanent housing and getting folks transitioned into healthcare, getting their IDs, because a lot of times they come in without that, getting access to pet care if they have a pet. They provide a whole host of different services that are very helpful to getting folks thinking about what their future looks like and getting transitioned into a better life. So we will have a code of conduct that everyone needs to abide by. We also have grievance procedures in place. So if a resident doesn't agree with the decision that was made by one of the staff, they can go above their head. They can go to management and bring that to them. We have full-time case managers on site again. They provide all the services I mentioned, and we also they have access to we have a lot of LIHI housing across the region, so they have direct access with their colleagues that work in those buildings. We have other subsidized housing. In some cases, there'll be people able to transition into private market rate housing. And in a lot of cases, people are reunited with their families. We have a lot of stories around that of people that their family is in another part of the state or another part of the country, and we buy the plane ticket, the train ticket, the bus ticket to get them reunited. We make sure that connection happens, and we stay. We work with them. We work with the family to make sure it's a safe, stable situation that they're getting into. So we have a lot of stories of that happening at many of our sites. And then again, it's really crucial that we are moving folks, getting them the services they need, and getting them into permanent housing, and that's the whole idea of the program. Code of conduct, couple basic things. Got to be respectful, just like the roommates in your household, the family members in your household, your neighbors in your neighborhood. You got to be respectful of other residents in the surrounding community. We have no tolerance of violence or threatening behavior. There's no alcohol or drugs allowed in public spaces. We also have safety and cleanliness standards. Part of that is people have to do, we want them to do chores. We want them to be part of the upkeep and working with the community on that, because we have a lot of volunteers who want to help out as well, so they'll be working with probably some volunteers from the outside. And then there's going to be regular meetings with case management, people that want to, they need to think about what their future looks like and be part of, and work with the case management to get housing ready, get their documentation together, look for housing appointments, set up for housing appointments, look for housing opportunities that are out there, a program that fits their needs, and then move on into housing. We are committed to being a good neighbor. We take that very seriously. This community meeting, we're having another one at 6 o'clock, so stick around if you want to hear all this all over again. We're going to do that, if we'll have smaller meetings with groups, anybody that wants us to come and present, we can do that. And this is part of how we communicate about these sites and answer questions, and we're transparent about the program. We're forming a community advisory group, probably going to be about 7, 8 folks that are on that, but sometimes we have more. Sometimes they get as large as 14 or 15 people. They're going to be neighbors, local businesses, faith communities, providers, and the idea is to provide local community oversight, advisory input, and then support into the program. These are not all going to be all cheerleaders necessarily. We're going to have some folks on there that might want to raise concerns, and that's totally okay. That's why we're here. That's why we want to get together to talk about these things. And then for folks that want to just be there at the monthly meeting, that's okay. But you can also, if you want to volunteer, get involved, you can do that too. That's another way to get plugged in. So these meetings are public meetings. You don't have to be a member to join. If you want to just come and check them out, that's totally fine. So you can reach out to me for more information on that. And then what else am I going to say on that? And then I was going to say we actually have 4 or 5 people that have already reached out, probably several of you in the room, who've reached out and said you wanted to join. I guess it's the CAG, the CAG. And that's great. We're like pretty much almost have a full CAC. We just need a few more people. So, of course, we'll accept more beyond that. So feel free to apply, and I will send you an application. We'll meet with any neighborhood group or organization or business that wants to meet with us, and then we're available to answer questions, address any concerns. If you have an idea or ways you want to support or volunteer, please let us know. Now, we are going to have a a shelter operations manager, that's for our tiny house villages, who's going to be taking over to manage the site, and they're going to be the main contact once the site opens. I'll still be around in case anyone wants to reach out to me, but in the meantime, you can reach out to me anytime. John and I are both listed on that flyer that was passed around, so you can reach out to either one of us, and we will answer any question you have, so just let us know. So this is my contact information to join the community advisory group. If you want to volunteer or donate clothes, you can still reach out to me if you just want to have one contact. But we have this awesome volunteer programs manager that started with us a few months ago, named Kyle Lane, and her email is up on the screen. So this is a great great example of some volunteers that came to set up tables at our dockside apartments in Green Lake in Seattle, which is a similar program, a hotel we were able to quickly acquire and convert into permanent supportive housing. It's a pretty nice building too. They have a view at Green Lake and everything. So besides that, so just another example, there's groups that come out to do these volunteer opportunities, and it's a lot of fun. And there's my contact information. And I think we're going to open it up to questions at this point.
Yeah, we'll open up the question and answers. And but first, Scott, did you want to think? Okay. So we'll answer any questions and responses. We'll also listen to a comment, but we're not necessarily going to respond to comments. We're going to respond to questions through this process. We have scheduled this for till 4:30, so because we do have 2 sessions, we want to be cut off at 4:30. But if anybody would like to ask a question at this point in time, we do have Donna and Jenny with some microphones that can come to you. So just raise your hand. Yes. Yes.
The people that are currently staying there, they've been told they have to vacate by the 24th of December. So is that true or fact, or will they be able to continue on, or what?
We are aware of what those current residents have been told, and we are working on a strategy to keep them in place, and they will not be moved out on the 24th of December. That's what Josh had mentioned too about the individuals that are currently staying there. We're working on maintaining and keeping them in there, working with existing current hotel management to make sure that they do not evict those individuals. So we are going to keep them in place and keep them supported.
They're actually number 1 on the prioritization list.
Okay.
So we're keeping them there, and we're going to make sure they have what they need to stay put.
So is this program also going to help the ones that are trying to get into housing? Personally, myself, I've been over here for a year. I've been at the hotel, and I've been trying to get into an apartment for a year. The apartment situation is horrendous. They're trying to get into something. The rent is anywhere from $1,800 to $2,400. I just had knee replacement. I'm in my FMLA. I can't afford that with my current bills. So that becomes a problem with nowhere to go for housing,
Yes,
apartment.
that is, and I don't know if Keely or Josh, do you want to talk to or speak to placement as people are in the current facility and how they will be go on the list of placement for permanent housing?
Yeah, well, you know, we have the list that we laid out. I could actually go back and show you it, or where my clicker go. I guess you took it. No, it's here. Let me see if I can go back. There it is. So this is kind of the idea of folks, how they're going to be referred into the program. But I will say we have, so we have this site, but we also have Billy Frank. We have other buildings in the region where we provide permanent supportive affordable housing or just affordable housing. And if you'd like to reach out to us, we can help out with that. I mean, we have our own buildings that we could provide something like that if there's interest. I can give you my card.
And then in addition, just in housing in general and trying to get affordable housing, that is a issue that is very well known in our region, everywhere, especially in our region. And one of the things the Regional Housing Council is going to be working on is not only homeless response services, but how do we get more affordable housing into the marketplace? You know, just as you talked about, a lot of the market rate rents are coming in, or housing prices coming in at very high levels. So how do we start working with either nonprofit and public partners as well as private sector developers to try to figure out how we get more of those housing in that meets more of the income levels that we have in this area. And that's ongoing policy work and implementation. But as Josh said, there are projects coming online that are permanent supportive or lower income that will be looking at how to place individuals into them if they're ready to take on those type of units.
Can I just add really quickly? There's this really exciting development in the last couple of years where we've been able to, through the state's rapid acquisition program, we've been able to acquire newly constructed buildings or hotels where they went out of business and converted into permanent housing, permanent supportive housing, 30% AMI in a lot of cases, so pretty low. And we've opened like 5 buildings. Just as an example, we've opened buildings locally around here. Some of the I mentioned, I think I listed them on the slides, but also in Seattle, like we've opened at least like 6 buildings. And that's a way. It takes a long time to build housing at all, right? It takes like 4 or 5 years to build a building, get the permitting, the financing together. So this is a way that you can convert a hotel or some newly constructed building that might have been market rate, or that was the plan, into permanent housing, permanent affordable housing, and do it in like 60 to 90 days. So we've been able to increase the stock by many hundreds of units in a really short period of time. So we want to continue to doing that across the region, Thurston County, Pierce County, King County, everywhere.
Tom, did you have any more to add on that, or?
No, just to kind of reiterate that we know affordable housing in the area is a challenge. And I mean, that's one of the things LIHI will have case managers specifically to work with folks to identify that housing. And they'll have connections to, in addition to LIHI, there's many other affordable housing properties in our community and working with folks to identify long-term permanent solutions. So that's part of the program.
Another question? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I live in that area just down the road on Skokomish Way, and my girlfriend and I walk regularly, pretty much every day. We walk right past that spot. And so when we heard about this, it was like, oh my God, what's this going to be? What's it going to do? How's it going to affect us? We used to walk downtown Olympia by the lake, but we quit doing that when there was that huge homeless thing. Just made us nervous. So I guess you've got other places like this. What unanticipated impacts have you seen? I mean, you say no drug use in the facility, but my understanding is a lot of people that are homeless are drug abusers. Does that mean they're going to go off-site into our neighborhood? I'd just like to hear what impacts you've actually seen from the facilities you've got operating.
Yeah, well, so there's a couple of things to share in this. So first of all, Anecdotally speaking, when we do community engagement at all of our sites months before it opens, and we often form one of these groups. It's usually called Community Advisory Council at a lot of other sites. And when they open, the neighbors have I knocked on the doors. We had a community meeting. They have my email and my cell. I've had very few situations where, like when we opened Aspen Court in Tacoma, Dockside Apartments in Green Lake, or other sites in Seattle, where we were able to convert over a hotel, and people had an issue after it opened. I just haven't heard a lot of complaints from folks. But I will say the reason why what people mention those concerns, and they're very legitimate. It's like, who are the new folks you're bringing to my neighborhood? You're bringing them in from really rough situations. What's that going to mean for me, for my, my business, my home? And the reason is that it starts with the vetting process and the code of conduct, and knowing when somebody is referred to the site, first of all, they know that it's, they know this is the community where they need to do chores, they need to work with case management. They can't just come there to hang out. They have to actually work on a future plan. And we want them to be, we have no drugs or alcohol in public spaces, but the idea is somebody might be coming in that might have an issue and they need to get into the treatment programs. It's going to be a lot easier to help them get into those programs if they're not out on the streets and they're actually there in the facility. And we have a lot of success. Our case managers, our behavioral health specialists have a lot of success with doing that. So when they know what we start from the referral process before they even get there. When they get there, the manager sits down with them, goes over the code of conduct, and makes sure, can you follow these rules? Can you live here in this community? And then we have people. There's just a lot of churn because people are moving out into permanent housing. Case managers are moving them out. We also have great relationships with the police departments at the hotels and the villages where we have clients. And the thing is that if there's going to be a few situations where somebody might not work out in the program, we might need some help with somebody, and we have partnerships that I think are really productive to help folks with maybe moving into another shelter program that better meets their needs if that's not the right one. So we've had a lot of success with that. And one of the things with the code of conduct is no loitering. We can send you a copy of it. There's no loitering allowed. It's very clear about that. You have to be respectful of the surrounding neighborhood because we know there's a lot of scrutiny on each of these programs, each of these sites that we're hosting. So we want to make sure that we're good neighbors. And then forming the community advisory group, this is another way to get involved and if there's anything that comes up, to bring these ideas and concerns forward if there are any.
So when you say no loitering, one of our concerns was that a lot of homeless panhandle. We've already got a lot of panhandlers out in that Marvin Road area, and in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, they'll be in this great place and getting help, but during the day, are they going to go out and double the panhandler population in our little community there?
Well, so I think when it comes to that, well, first of all, I think isn't panhandling, I understand that there might be a law here about that. But when folks are moving into the site and they're getting the services that they need, and they're getting access to employment resources and signing up for benefits that they may not even know they qualified for, and they have case managers to work with that care about them and are working with them, they're less likely to go engage in those kind of things. And people do leave the site. They have free will to do that, but a lot of times they're going to work. They might be going to a housing appointment. They might be just shopping for the groceries. They're doing the things that you and I, do every day when we go around and go, just go about our lives and our daily business. We don't have a lot of situations that have happened where somebody goes out and causes an issue in the neighborhood or goes and goes and panhandles or something, because they're getting the services are right there to help them with not engaging those behaviors. There's also 3 meals a day, so they don't have to worry about food security.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I was going to mention too, is even a lot of facilities don't have the meals provided on site, and that makes a big difference for those basic services. And also what you described too is we already have in the community, and we have a program that we've had in place for a couple of years with our community resource unit and our mobile outreach team going out and interacting with individuals in the communities up in the northeast area, Marvin Road, as well as down around this area. And and it's constantly interacting and with individuals that aren't particularly tied to a facility, to check with them, check on them, make sure that, they're provided services, offer services, excuse me. And I think Deputy Chief Hollis could probably speak to a little bit that in terms of the Lacey's Community Resource Unit program.
Yeah, so we have, as Rick was saying, we have community resource officers that are going out. We partner with Olympic Health and Recovery Services to provide us with navigators to help people that might be looking for other services, might be in need. And so our goal is to try and find positive outcomes for those people. Even though they might be out in our community, what we found, at least in our research, looking at LIHI's programs and everything like that, is it's a program that's effective, is a program that is partnering with, they want to be good neighbors, and so they're not just letting people run amok, for a lack of a better term. And some of the data that we've looked at they've shown that there's been a decrease in calls. They've shown that they've had a decrease in criminal calls for service in the areas that they've started building their facilities. So we see it as a very positive program. We think that the partnerships that they have with other community groups and working with the city is going to be a positive result for those that are trying to get into better situations.
Scott, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to add one other thing too. Rick had mentioned the Council of Operations, so that means city staff will also be actively engaged with LIHI and making sure the operations meet the needs of the surrounding neighborhoods and the business owners. So we're committed to the success of this program. This is not an arm's length transaction where we're like, okay, good luck, LIHI, you have this. I mean, we want to make sure this has a positive impact on the community and really no negative impact. So we'll be monitoring that. In terms of the panhandling, that was found unconstitutional a couple years back. So there's no panhandling laws that would enforce someone from doing something on the corner, essentially asking for help. So that is something that is unenforceable at this point.
Yep. And then Keely, you tend.
Just really, in my previous life, I operated a shelter that eventually became 24/7. And the impact of having site control of where individuals are living, it's not just a hotel where folks are, randomly placed, but this is LIHI's operations, so they are there 24/7. It makes a tremendous difference. And just even if you're frustrated, having someone to call that can address it. So we engaged a lot with our neighbors when I ran Rosie's Place, when they were upset, when they were happy, and we could address their concerns in that moment. And so there wasn't a delay in response, and that makes a huge difference in the way that the neighborhood responds to shelters and also just relationship building all around. I mean, issues can be addressed immediately. So just wanted to shout that out a little bit. Thank you.
Yes.
I was wondering whether there's an Olympic View Elementary School very nearby. Was that even considered in this selection of this site?
Well, I'll just say that when we do community engagement, we hit everything at minimum 500 square feet, and we go out even farther than that. And when it comes to schools, we have now 17 tiny house villages and 2 enhanced shelters across the region, along with around 75 affordable housing buildings, and we have schools that are actually really close to a lot of our sites. And it helps. Some of our villages provide services for families, and they actually can have their kids go to those schools because they're close by. We just haven't had any issues with schools telling us that there was some problem with it. In fact, we bring the schools onto the community advisory councils, in this case, community advisory group, and then the kids end up like making welcome baskets or bringing donations or doing a fundraising drive, for the residents. So we haven't had any. We just work really closely with the schools and make sure, that we enforce the code of conduct just like we would for anybody in the neighborhood.
I walk this area every morning, and I do see, people that are on the street. But they're basically, once in a while, In fact, sometimes I give them some dollars just to get something to eat and things like that. But they've been very docile of the people that I see. And again, sometimes I don't see them regularly. Sometimes they're either transient, or whatever. But I'm also wondering whether this site will be a magnet. Because it's there, you'll have more people that comes to it that we never saw before. And that's my concern. I'm living there within walking distance in that area. And then I see the kids at the elementary school every day with their families. And this particular site, according to your chart, no families is allowed in this site. So the people that's going to be in here either is going to be single or divorced or whatever other problems that they have. And so they're not family members. And so therefore, I'm kind of curious as to, I don't have any young children, but I see these young kids at the school and wondering the concerns of the parents that goes to that school, and that's my concern basically.
Well, I'll just say that it's really about the vetting process and about making sure that people understand what's in the code of conduct, and that when the staff, by the way, do perimeter checks, they make sure there's nothing going on, and it could just be somebody that's just moving them along, that don't belong there. So we want to just serve the people in the program. I know that there's a perception out there sometimes that there's it's a magnet effect or something like that. That's why we're very at all of our sites. We go out to the public sidewalk, the streets. We walk around it. We make sure that there's nothing. There's no garbage. There's no there's nobody hanging out or anything. So because we're cognizant of that perception that's out there. So we want to make sure that we keep it a clean space, and we're also activating it because we have the staff do security and operations. We have cameras up and everything. We're activating the space so people know there's eyes on the neighborhood. So that a lot of times actually results in a community that's cleaner and safer because there's a staff, there's always eyes in the neighborhood, there's a staff presence out there. The residents also participate in chores, so they might be out there with a vest on, cleaning up litter right outside the site. So, John, you want to mention some of the experiences we've had at some of our other sites where we've worked with?
Yeah, so the one I would say which would would mirror this would be our Aspen Court off of Hosmer. And again, before we got there, the crime was up, the calls were up. But again, like Josh was saying, we're going to have the 24-hour staff. A lot of the clients, all of them do chores, they help. And really, a lot of the individuals that we're going to be receiving aren't used to getting opportunities. And really, this is what this place is going to be for individuals. They're humans just like us. They go through hard times and good times. But this is really a place that they're going to be able to have opportunity and have individuals that are there to support them and help them on their journey. And I think a lot of the individuals aren't used to having that. So again, you're going to have those moments for the clients to get acclimated. But really, what we've seen over at Aspen Court, which would say is a lot more tougher area than the Days Inn. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Hosmer area, but it is a lot more tougher. And we've had a lot of individuals move into permanent housing. We've had families reunited, and we've done a lot of great things. And I understand that, it's different, and it's like, what type of clientele we're going to have. But I would also say I live in Lacey. I live probably 10 minutes away from the site. I went to high school in Lacey. I went to elementary school in Lacey. So I'm super familiar about Lacey, how it used to be and how it is now. And I commend the City of Lacey and also LIHI and everyone that really stepping up to the plate, because we're at a point now that if we don't do something, it's going to get worse right now. So I hope that kind of answered a couple questions.
And just to add on to the question about a magnet, too, I just want to iterate that this is not some place where it'd be a drop-in services. This is a place where people are going to be placed there, and they're going to, so it's not going to be people just coming and going on a daily basis that don't reside there for services. And so just I don't want to say because this facility is here, all of a sudden it's going to be a magnet and bring a bunch of other people looking for services. It won't necessarily work that way. And then the other piece of it is a question about consideration to Olympic View Elementary School in the general area. This is a commercial area. This is a hotel operation. And so it's something that's an allowed use by state law to use as a transitional housing, permanent supportive housing type of use. And so it was looked at as a commercial property designation with Olympic View really not in close proximity or adjacency to the site. It's actually on the other side of Walmart, well away from the commercial area as it is. So there's not like a direct connection between those two sites. But as Josh says, we do want to continue that community outreach and into the neighborhoods and make sure that there's a good neighbor program going on.
You're also close to the site, so if you're interested, I can get you a application to the community advisory group.
Maybe interject here. Josh, can you talk about, it's a managed site, so can maybe explain a little bit more about that? I mean, you have to have, if you have a car, you have to be permitted, you can't have visitors, but there's a check-in. There's a fairly structured protocol to access the site.
For visitors and, yeah.
Yeah, there is. Well, first of all, it's 24/7 staffed. There's a desk, at the front where you have to check in. So people can't just, they got to check in when they're coming in and out. There's a manager there, shelter operations manager, whose number and email will be posted around, so you can always reach out to them anytime. And you can reach out to me, of course, if you can't reach them for some reason. And then we're going to have shelter organizers that provide that around-the-clock support. So it is a very managed site. We have a lot of security protocols in place, including cameras and things like that. And that when they're at the front, they can see where everybody is on the cameras, so they're watching things really closely. And staff regularly go out and do a perimeter check. They walk around the site to make sure there's nothing out of place, there's no litter on the ground. And then residents, clients in the site do that too, actually. So it is a very managed, structured program. And we've been doing this for quite a while. So we have experience doing this at other sites. And we can tell when there's like little, might be a little trouble point that comes up, and we know when to look, where to look for those, and we tackle those quickly.
I have somebody waiting for a while to ask a question, so please.
I have two questions. Will any of the rooms be set aside as like couples rooms? So
There'll be individuals, couples, and I think people with pets.
okay. And then my second question is, what about folks that have RSO status on their record? Are they able to be referred?
We are not allowing sex offenders.
Okay. And I actually have a third question. Who's providing the hot meals?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question.
So
John?
at this time, we're actually going to be going through UGM, which is Union Gospel Mission.
And we have Operation Sack Lunch that we partner with at a bunch of other sites. So that's a lot of times how it is up in North End.
Just quick question is, how many case managers are y'all planning to have?
Well, we're going to have a lot of people there, so I think we'll have at least a few case managers, so they don't have a huge caseload for each of them.
I have a question. So you say you don't allow registered sex offenders there, but everybody's over 18.
Can you hold your mic closer to your?
Oh, sorry. So nobody can be there there are registered sex offenders, but everybody living there has to be over 18.
There's no minors allowed. That's
Right.
correct.
So why can't they live there? I mean, well, okay, let me say not only them, but what other group that is not allowed there, in other words? I mean, immediately out of prison, for example, are they not allowed to go there because they don't fit, I understand they're on probation and they may not qualify, but who isn't allowed there, in other
Yeah.
words? Because I see up there on your number one, it says they have to reside in a properly placed. Where do these people go to be properly placed?
Sure.
Because you say, you're talking about a lot of people at the door, making sure certain people don't get in the door. However, where do these people go to get properly placed? And since you're not allowing sex offenders, and one of the gentleman's questions was about schools nearby, I understand it's like a 1,500-foot rule, and I'm sure you're a sheriff or whoever this gentleman is over here knows that rule, but then are you offering for them people?
So I know it's hard for folks that have SOs on their record to find programs that work for them. We encounter that a lot. We get those kind of, requests to help out folks in those situations. And this isn't, this one's, we're not allowing SOs. It's just a bottom line thing. Now that doesn't mean that we're not allowing folks that have criminal convictions on their record or have some sort of, something in their background. We know that people that struggle to find housing and struggle to find work, that's because they have something on the record or they have a warrant on the record. That's precisely why we want to serve them in this program, to help them with getting that warrant off the record, getting that, resolving whatever that is, because we know they're not going to be able to get into a lot of traditional housing because they do the background check and they can't get in. So this does not ban folks that are in those situations. And it's just, but really the two things are, no SOs, and then this is a program that's serving adults who are experiencing homelessness. So it is nobody under 18. And was that? No. Felons. If somebody has a felony on the record, that doesn't disqualify them from being served at this site. In fact, we want to help them with, overcoming those barriers that they're facing to get into housing, and that's what the case managers are supposed to do.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sharon Lee. I want to speak on that point. So we do know that in some communities, the right-of-way program, which is a state program, some communities are setting aside other resources for families with children or maybe even a shelter for homeless women. In terms of the right-of-way, many people living along the right-of-way are singles and couples, people with pets, and they often can't, there's a barrier for them to access existing facilities because they're overcrowded, oversubscribed. But I want you to know, for instance, we operate tiny house villages, and we do mix families with children, singles and couples, people with pets. It is very workable. But I think because this program was with the state right-of-way, they were specifically concerned about chronically homeless people who had been living on, on the freeway ramp, under the bridge for years and years. And they wanted to find that's the largest need, the largest population. So I think that's not to say that there aren't places for homeless families with children. There are. And the other thing is that we also encounter in many of our working with outreach workers, we end up with pregnant women. So we will house pregnant women, and then our case managers will work very hard to find them more of a family setting.
Thank you. And Keely, do you have a?
Yeah, and just to clarify, so the first priority, the persons currently residing that were placed by providers, so there is a program called the Housing and Essential Needs Program, the HEN program, and so those individuals that are currently staying at that hotel under the HEN program are already placed, so they're already there. There may be another program that has placed people into the hotel for temporary housing or transitional housing, so that's who those folks are. The rights-of-way folks will be, there's an outreach effort through Olympia Mutual Aid Partners that are holding, along with the City of Olympia staff, holding a by-name list of each of the camps. So that they have a list of everyone who's at the camp. Once that list is set, that's who's there and that's who's going to be offered housing. And so they will be prioritized into the hotel or enhanced shelter through that by name list and through those outreach efforts. Moving onward, if there's space and right-of-way has all been resolved, we have the coordinated entry system in Thurston County is how we prioritize people into housing projects as they come online. So that is there's a by name list that we're developing, and there's a master list, but we're making it even better. There is a weekly meeting where providers get together, go through the list, and case consult everyone into those programs that are available, that have openings. And so that will be that third bullet there would be how folks would be placed into the shelter, would be that.
Can't quite reach that high.
Yeah. And then also there are, within the proposal that we submitted to Commerce, and I don't know if you can talk to this, the proposal was very clear on criteria for individuals that, and operations kind of expectations based on consolidated homeless grant guidelines, which are just guidelines that kind of funnel through all of the contracts through the state and the county. And that's available if you'd like to look at that. But there were some specific requirements from Commerce on who and how and when and how individuals can expect to be placed, and then also how operations should be focused, if that's helpful.
Nathan, do you have something?
So Nathan with the Department of Commerce. I think that there's one thing that hasn't been said here that addresses kind of some of the answers to your questions as well that isn't related to this. This is one property in an entire ecosystem trying to help homelessness. And so there are other properties out there that assist for people who have sex offender registration issues. There are other facilities out there that help people who have violence issues. Because one of, and I don't know the answer to this question, and I'm not going to answer for them, but it isn't really the greatest thing to place women who are suffering from homelessness into a place where you have sex offenders also suffering from homelessness. And so there is some break of these individuals that needs to happen. You can't place sex offenders with families. And so if this serve families, you're making a choice when you serve certain people that you can't in this population serve others. But this is, again, one property in an ecosystem within Thurston County and an ecosystem within the state that is serving all of the people who are suffering from homelessness. This particular effort, as Sharon said, is very specifically from the legislature guided towards state rights of way, which is a very, very specific thing. You know, Sylvester Park, we don't touch that because it's not a state right of way. These are, you know, highway and byways and individuals living in those highways and byways. And so I think the answer to your question fundamentally is no, they may not serve it here, but it doesn't mean there's not a place for them to go in the ecosystem if they're identified somewhere within our structure. So my money follows, the money for this effort follows the individuals who come from the state right of way wherever we place them. This may be one place, but it's not the only place. Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you travel around the city, and anybody who's gone on to Pacific anytime recently, you'll notice the Pacific is completely clean. The underbrush is gone, everything. That was this effort. And so all of the people who were on Pacific have been relocated, except for one couple, into some housing. Unity Commons, I think everybody went so far, hasn't been very successful because it's congregate shelter, and that's not the best alternative for people who are suffering from homelessness. This is a much better solution for that, which is why Commerce made a decision internally. The legislature gave us, this may be way off topic for you, but I want to give you a context of what actually we're doing here. The legislature gave us $45 million to invest in homelessness. Commerce made an internal decision of the types of money that we have available to us to add another, essentially, $100 million to that effort to be able to afford this hotel and buy it with what he referred to as rapid capital, which wouldn't have been available otherwise. And so there is an ecosystem thing here that's going on where, again, to answer your question, and now I'm just repeating myself, so I'll quit after this. This isn't the only solution in Thurston County where we're placing people. This is one of the solutions in Thurston County. It's a nice solution because it uses something that's available to us. For whatever reason, hotels became available, probably because of COVID and the lack of travel and other things. It's provided us a very stabilized existing housing piece that can house people quickly. And what is unique about this particular program is there aren't many programs within the homeless ecosystem that come along with the type of operating dollars that this has come along with. And so it is a slightly different model and a better model. You guys have probably never heard this in the room. If you want to, go out and look up the Houston model. It's touted as the model everywhere in the country. We're essentially doing the Houston model, but better. I know that because I just got back from Texas a little while ago, and we heard about the Houston model firsthand. They have no path by which they can sustain this over time. The legislature has made a commitment to this to sustain this over time. That $45 million that we have is a perpetual $45 million right now. It's in the budget as a baseline budget item that doesn't go away. And so we can support this for, it's not like next month, next year, we don't have to fight for the money over time. It's just there. And so, you know, I understand all of the concerns. I hope that as you walk down this path and you see what's done at this particular facility, hopefully you can change your mind about what these things might look like and help communicate to all your other neighbors who may not see it direct in firsthand and didn't have the opportunity to come here and talk to us today. that this is a little bit different over time. It won't be, I think, what people think it will be. First, I don't think most of these things are what people think they are. This will be much different. It's a coordinated effort that's just simply different.
Yeah, and thank you. And just to kind of add on to that, just a slight is, you mentioned the ecosystem, and ultimately, we got to stabilize those individuals in the right-of-ways now, and this creates a great opportunity for that enhanced shelter. But it's the goal to convert this over time to permanent supportive housing, so we start creating those stepping stone types of facilities that builds out that infrastructure or ecosystem so that people have a pathway to move up into more permanent, secure housing.
Hi, my question's for Keely. Going off what you said about this right-of-way list, so is that list gonna be set, or is that list gonna continue to grow? Because I noticed you said if there's enough spots for folks going through the coordinated entry system to be referred, and I want to ensure that I'm understanding this correctly. If there were spots for folks to be referred through coordinated entry, people will be referred through coordinated entry. There won't be set aside units that only the City of Lacey or the City of Olympia can place people in. It will go through the coordinated entry system.
I can speak from what I understand, and most of that is from this. So once the right-of-ways are resolved and there are spaces become available, that becomes the next priority placement. So it would go through the coordinated entry system for referrals.
So that
That's
is,
my understanding. That's
that's
on
what's
two different slides.
Yep, and that's developed in the MOU between Department of Commerce, Thurston County, and the City of Lacey. This is the prioritization of how people are placed into this facility. That third priority would be the local coordinated entry. If there is space available and there's work being done, by Lacey staff or Olympia staff or elsewhere in the Thurston County, that there's space available, then there could be a referral through that piece. But it's based off beds units available and down that priority list.
And the coordinated entry system, the intent is to reduce side doors. So, because there are people that have been on that list for a really long time, as you know. And so circumventing that list when there's an opening creates, backlogs and is frustrating for the individuals that have been waiting for so long. So that's the intent of why coordinated entry would be the next placement after right-of-way.
And also, just to add on, this is just one. I mentioned the other part of this package, this partnership, is the tiny home village that'll be constructed at Franz Anderson Road in Olympia with another 50 units. And there's going to be multiple areas that are coming online that utilize those different placement lists too, for locating people. And
What tiny home village?
Part of the funding package is to also fund the construction of a 50-unit tiny home village on Franz Anderson Road in Olympia as an Olympia project. And so that will be coming online some point in 2023 as well.
Okay.
I just want to add one little thing to that. Think of this as like, and this is a bad word in this particular room because this means something else, but it's true. It's a continuum of care. Our contracts require LIHI to commit to us 40 years of property operations. And so for the first 3 to 4 years, this is going to be dedicated to the state right-of-way, where we're going to go out, identify those individuals on state rights-of-way, clear them off of the state rights-of-way, and it probably won't get to the coordinated entry system because the state made a decision that that's going to be the priority for this money and these targets. But there's going to come a point in time, there's only so much state right-of-way in Thurston County. And once we clear a site, we're trying to keep it clean permanently. That's what people like Kim Condrat with the City of Olympia are doing and our outreach providers are doing, and the City of Lacey Police, the City of Olympia Police, the City of Tumwater Police, Washington State Patrol. Once all of that is cleared, this now is a facility that is simply open to the coordinated entry system. There will come a point in time where it's highly unlikely that there's still people living in the state right-of-way. Maybe that's 3 years, maybe that's 5 years. I don't know what the answer to the question is, but this is going to be a 40-year program. And so there's going to be a long piece of this puzzle that is not dedicated to state right-of-way. But it's not immediate. It's going to be a little ways out.
All right, we have about 20 more minutes. Any other questions? Yes. To your left.
Thank you. Push a button. Thank you. I was wondering, it's a pretty simple question, I think. Will individuals who have been either charged or convicted with some type of a violent crime, domestic violence, be eligible for this facility?
I think the answer is unless they present some kind of a clear safety risk for the residents, yeah.
Thank you.
And I guess I'll add to that. In our contract with the state specifically requires that this be a low barrier, that we, with the exception of the sex offenders, we are admitting folks to this property coming from the rights of way. So that is in our contract with Commerce, that is the expectation, that this is a low barrier shelter. That doesn't mean no barrier, and it doesn't mean there aren't rules, but the expectation is we're going to try to place as many people as possible that we can safely.
Those are the folks those are the folks that need the most help.
Sure.
So I guess my question's for Keely and everybody. Is the right-of-way list set now? I know Ole Matt's been working on it for a while now. Are the names set now? Because what I can see happening is the same thing that happened on Ensign, where the word got out and people flooded to Ensign, and those places never got opened up to any other encampments because people just kept going to where, the houses were being offered.
For sure. I'm seeing my City of Olympia pals in the audience, and so I think I'm going to get this right. So you just shout out if I don't. It's site by site. So right now they're going, and this may change in the future, but for now, they choose a site. A site is chosen. So right now it's City Center, and so after a period of time doing outreach, they're creating that list for that specific site. They're not doing it simultaneous to, say, Wheeler or Slater Kinney. They're building that list for that site because and there are providers in the room that know this, that with several camps that are not right-of-way being swept in the last 3 or 4, what is time? 3 to 4 months. These camps have grown significantly. The jungle has grown. The Slater Kinney is really struggling. It's bursting at the seams because of camps being swept. So that's how I understand it is operating now. I think there is if they can increase outreach, there's talk about being able to go out and make contact with people on Slater Kinney now and people on Wheeler now and see and just get that going. But right now, capacity-wise, they're just doing it site by site.
Right, so to add to that, like the Lily Road was one of the first sites we worked on. That list is closed. You can't move to Lily Road and then be placed on the list. Pacific Avenue, that list has been closed. People have been identified who were there. That site's closed. You can't now move there and get added to the list. We're working on City Center. The City Center list is closed. You can't move to City Center and get added on the list at this point.
Yeah, I think that the only other, Kim, she can talk about this more. The other thing that I think that you mentioned that I think is important is that we don't announce this to anybody. We don't announce it to the press. We don't go up and we're not out there saying, hey, look at us, we're doing great work. For the specific reasons you talked about, we want nobody to know what we're doing when we go into a site and we identify it to avoid exactly what you're talking about. But to Keely's point, this is the reality of the situation. We're in the back end of something that cities are finally actually addressing. That's in every single community that we're in, whether King County, Snohomish County, Spokane, and they are doing their own sweeps. So many of them don't offer housing in association with it. Ours, we have to provide housing. So one of the things that we have to do by the legislature is we have to provide a substantially better, essentially living environment than what they have now. How you define that, I may define that as indoors. That may not be how the individual who's there defines it. But, reasonable people acting reasonably, that's the definition by we're going by. So we don't actually, we don't necessarily look at the individual and say, you get to tell me whatever you want. That's not the way that it works. But we do go in, Kim, the outreach teams go in, create the list, like Keely said, it's site by site. We talk about in a group, we meet twice a week, 1 hour a day, twice a week. And I do that in every single county that we're working in the state. So I have 10 hours of meeting just to talk about what we're doing on right away and how we're doing it and what the outreach people are doing and where the housing is available for these individuals, what we're going to do. This side of the mountain has been way easier. In Spokane, we have a camp that was 600 people, is 450 people right now. Really tough to establish that kind of facility. We just don't have the housing for it. Here, once we fill this up, we'll kind of be at a standstill. And so Commerce is working with Washington State Patrol and with Department of Transportation and the Governor's Office to see what can be added next round. What additional money can be added. The election was favorable to us for that cause. But, you know, it's not that we have a list for all state rights of way in Thurston County. There are some state rights of way right now that probably don't have people on them, that because of all of the efforts that are happening right now are going to have people on them at some point in time. We're trying to avoid that in certain areas. We're trying to avoid people influxing into state rights of way, but it's impossible because of all of the activity that's going on. Ensign Road being cleared. There are other issues with people in RVs that we have to find a different solution for because of the Homestead Act. And so this is a really complex thing, but you know, we're doing it one site at a time. We go into one site, we identify who the people, we close the list, nobody else can get on the list, we address those people, and then we wipe out the site. The other thing that I would add to that, and this is one of the big things that Commerce did, and you didn't ask this question, but I'll say it. What happens when these people fail out of housing and the places that they could go are done, and now they're in your community, not in a public right of way? We made the commitment as Commerce very early on that in order for us to ask these people who are doing this work there, and this is not the way they've been doing it, that we would follow those people so long as you can find them again. So even though you may find somebody in a different place, if John ends up in Sylvester Park and we find John down the road, we've committed to funding John going back into housing at our cost, not at the city's cost, whichever city that may be. And so we've tried to do things, again, this is not the way I think a lot of people who are within the homeless system thought things would go when this money came out. It's a different path than what was probably the best scenario for some. But it is doing good work. We're trying to make some concessions, and it's a site-by-site thing. It's not that there's no proverbial list that's all of Thurston County that says these are the only people who will ever be in this path. That's just not true. There's going to be some people who are right now living on state right-of-ways who leave by the time we get to Sleater Kinney, and some other people who influx in who get the benefit of this and others don't.
But one of the, if I can interject, one of the pieces that what's really been productive and good about this partnership, and it's not just a partnership between Department of Commerce and Thurston County and Olympia and Lacey and Tumwater and the workings of the staff of those different entities. It's also, with the governor's initiative, it was a direction for not only Commerce, but multiple state agencies to engage going forward, which has been difficult to get that engagement in the past. And as Nathan mentioned earlier, it's not just Commerce providing funding, it's Washington State Patrol also doing enforcement actions or engagement on the site. It's Department of Transportation also going in and once individuals are placed, cleaning up and dealing with some of the garbage and those type of things. And so it's critical that these partnerships continue going forward because that long-term success of these projects is going to be continuing that work within those right-of-ways and in the surrounding community. So I do really thank the state and all those various agencies now coming forward and working and partnering with the local jurisdictions because that coordination has, I think, been very productive. And it's also been able to be a multi-pronged approach in terms of trying to address some of these issues that the communities are facing. And Kim, did you have anything to add on the outreach? Or?
Just two things. Part of the process that we figured out is that we as the City of Olympia, our outreach group, we go put the notices out once we've identified the site. We can't close the site until we have some units to put it into. So that's why we're at a standstill until we get the hotel and the tiny home village. So once we've identified it, we put out notices and we give them a date. This is the last time that you can get on our list, and we give them plenty of time, and we're going out. OLIMAP is going out. So and then anyone else who lives here, you got to let us know. We give them a phone number. They can come to City Hall, so that we try and do all the avenues to get as many people on that list so that someone doesn't feel like they've missed out, So we try to do our due diligence there. So that's it.
And then in addition to their work, the City of Lacey, and I know Tumwater would approach the same thing in the right-of-ways within our jurisdiction. Our CRU unit has done, through agreements with the Department of Transportation, created that list of individuals living there and then not allowing the size of the encampment to increase, continually provide services, outreach efforts, and eventually individuals are replaced or connected with family support networks. And so this model has been productive over the last year and a half, and it's moving on down along the corridors as well. Yes.
So who manages the right-of-way list?
Olympia, OLIMAP, right now.
Okay.
And it will depend on the site, because,
Okay.
you know, we may have different outreach providers in different places, and so it's whoever's doing the outreach at that particular site will manage the by name list.
Which I'm,
Originally, City of Olympia was doing it,
But,
OLIMAP came in and doing it.
isn't it right now OLIMAP now managing the coordinated entry list as well?
that was
And
my,
with support with, supported by family support services, right?
so that was the second part of my question, is the coordinated entry contract that OLIMAP's drawing up with the Family Support Center is very important. And I was wondering, so how much are they responsible for both coordinated entry and this right-of-way list?
I think with the single adult, so Family Support Center will be holding the master list. And there, when someone comes on to the by name list for the right-of-way, that's identified in the master list held by coordinated entry or Family Support Center at this time. So I think they're going to be separate but together, but I'm not OLIMAP, so I don't know if I'm answering that correctly. So they at this time, they're holding the list for right-of-way. That list and the master list will be, it informs the master list, is I guess what I'm trying to say, that Family Support Center is in charge of. I don't know if I'm answering that correctly.
I'll reach out to OLIMAP and ask.
Great. Got maybe time for one last question if there is? Okay, don't see anything. I do want to also, I neglected at the beginning, I apologize, but I want to also introduce some of our other partners. We have Jacinda Stilches in the audience with Thurston County, and she's a housing support or housing services manager. And Darian Lightfoot, who's the housing coordinator for the City of Olympia, and Rich Hoy, also back, who's the interim assistant city manager at the City of Olympia as well. And I want to thank everybody here because this has been a lot of work over the last 6 months now, since this conversation started with the right-of-way initiative. I also want to thank the Regional Housing Council as well as the city councils for Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater, because having this coordination and partnerships on a regional basis helped us be positioned with this right-of-way initiative to respond and identify projects and coordinate this effort as well. So I do want to thank everybody, and we'll start wrapping up for tonight. And if anybody has any other questions, there's be a few of us milling around if you want to approach us after the session. So again, thank you, everybody. And if you want to come back and hear some of this again, we're going to be on at 6.
Maybe you think of more questions.